Budget update by Deputy Director Patrick Case. You're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk about budget reduction. Exactly what I intended to present changed a little over the last couple of weeks. I'm sure everybody's well aware of all the headlines and the dire economic straits that Nevada is in, and the shortfall for the state of Nevada. We have been providing information to the State Budget Office and the Governor's Office regarding budget reductions. Disclaimer, I'm not at liberty to discuss those specific issues until such time as the Governor releases his proposals. But just this morning, they did release proposals for a 10% budget cut, which I think that was made public, the request was anyway. And that is now released and posted on the state budget website. So I'd like to detail that for you and speak to some other issues that we have. We were asked to prepare cuts up to 10% of our general funds. NDOW doesn't have a lot of general funds, but what we have is very important for some specific programs. We currently have about $840,000 budgeted per year in general funds. That is a reduction. We were reduced during the last legislative session. We took a hit of about 38% compared to what we were appropriated in the last biennium. That money funds, primarily it goes to positions, and it funds them in varying percentages. It pays for program costs as well. It primarily goes into three areas. The state wildlife grant, we use the general funds as match for that grant. That grant addresses non-game species and habitat. We also use it to administer our portion, our obligations under the Endangered Species Act, and we get federal funds for that at a 75-25 match rate. And the other piece that it is used for is human-wildlife conflicts. When our law enforcement officers go out to deal with a nuisance bear or something like that, they code their time to human-wildlife conflicts, and that is paid 100% with general funds. There is no federal match for that and no other source of fundings for it. So it's very important to us. You know, with our growing urban areas, that's a big issue that we have to deal with, and we're not to make a pun, but we're pretty bare right now on the amount of funding we have available to deal with that. So they asked for 10% cuts. That equated to about a little less than $30,000 in this current fiscal year, and about $85,000 in next fiscal year. Not real big numbers, certainly not to the degree of some other agencies that have a lot of general fund. But we found some pretty painless ways to come up with that cut. During the current fiscal year, we had salary savings in some existing positions. In our diversity division, we have some GIS positions that run our GIS shop. And we also have a position in fisheries that do work under the grants I described, and they've been vacant. We had existing savings. We could come up with the current year cuts for that. For fiscal year 2011, the statewide state wildlife grant, the match rate is going to increase. We'll be able to access that about halfway through next fiscal year. It's currently a 50-50 match. It will increase to 65-35. That was just enough to make that $85,000 cut. So we've managed to come up with that initial 10% without really any pain. However, I'm sure we've all seen the headlines that are looking at 20-22% shortfalls. We haven't been asked to put together any more proposals, but I'm just waiting for them to ask for more money. That is really going to hurt us. You know, the impact on being able to deal with human-wildlife conflicts, not being able to leverage those federal funds, it could mean positions if they were to take a lot more of that general fund. And also, you know, I think we're all a little apprehensive. There's been some comments in the paper by the leadership in the state about sweeping accounts. We have, you know, we have the heritage account. I know Commissioner Capurro saw this from a long ways off. We have some accounts with some pretty large balances on them. We have some reserves of sportsman dollars that could be vulnerable. They've been vulnerable in other states. Other states have taken money away from wildlife agencies. There is some federal regs that seem to afford some protection for sportsman dollars, but in these desperate times, I don't know that we can count on that protecting us from these accounts being swept. Again, nothing specific, but I think we're all concerned. We know how dire the situation is. I wanted to point out to the Commission and the members of the audience that there is a town hall meeting of the legislature. I wrote it up here on the board. It's a concurrent town hall meeting on the state budgets. They are going to have that in Las Vegas at the Grant Sawyer building, and here in Reno at the Reno City Hall at 9 a.m. next Saturday. If anybody is inclined, it's an opportunity to go and speak in support of wildlife and retaining sportsman dollars and funding for the department so that we don't have to diminish our programs any more than we already have. And if you can't make that meeting, by all means, contact your elected officials and let them know how you feel about it. They don't listen all that much to bureaucrats, but they listen an awful lot to voters. So if that is of concern to you, I would encourage everybody to express that concern.
I'd like to just make a couple comments. With a 985,000 or something deficit, million, what'd I say, thousand? Yeah, $1 million deficit. You know, they're going to try to pull rabbits out of hats. They're going to do everything because they're desperate. And being a political year, they don't want to cut anything that's going to lose them votes. And who conducts these meetings?
Well, they're the legislature. I'm not sure, but I think this might be the interim finance committee. I'm not, or if it's the full legislature.
No, it'd probably be a member of the legislature.
Member of the legislature?
Yeah,
Probably interim finance.
Yeah, I think it is interim finance. It's kind of unusual, so I'm not exactly sure how they're going to set it up.
It's somebody that'll listen then.
Yeah.
But those are some of the facts, and I think everyone's read about it and what the city of Reno's doing, the city of Sparks with the firemen, and what's happening in the state government, and they're changing. And thank goodness we got out of the general fund. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Tom, you might remember that when we got out of the general fund, and they thought that was the best thing to put us in the general fund. Then we finally decided all these promises, you go in the general fund, your problems are over, and we bid on it. And then I think it was, what, 333 is the bill number?
Yeah.
And we had the room packed with sportsmen, and thank goodness we'd be in disaster today if we didn't have everybody behind us in those days. And I think Commissioner Capurro remembers that too. And it was just, you know, a funny feeling you get when you deal with legislators, you know.
No trust.
No, I don't want to say that. They might be listening to us, but, you know, we have to depend on them. But, you know, the other thing, if they want to, you know, I still feel strong about that, and this happened at the last session. If they want to cut out the funds for the senior licenses and stuff like that, because they promised us. When I remember the hearing with Raggio and Senator Raggio and some of the other ones, they promised us we want to give senior license, and it's an unfunded mandate that we'll make it up in the general fund. If they're going to do it, then I think we ought to legislate them away, because it's a big hit. We're taking our license fees, and whether we can do it or not, I don't know, but I think that that's something that the legislative committee, I'd recommend. If that's going to happen, we'd want to go back and eliminate the senior. It's going to be very unpopular, but it's an unfunded mandate, and who's going to pay for it? And that's what's happening.
And when we presented our 10%, we talked to them about that. They asked a lot of questions. We provided them the information. It's roughly $500,000 a year in revenue that we don't collect because of the lower fees.
Yeah, I saw the numbers, but, you know,
Yeah, about 22,000 licenses. Yeah.
there's a big hit that we take, and we don't get that other general fund, and, you know, but, of course, I won't be grandfathered in, you know. Anybody have any questions for Patrick on this? We got some from the audience. Commissioner Rain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, you said from these general fund budget cuts that money will be taken out of either GIS positions that are currently vacant, fisheries positions? Was that right?
Yes.
But
We have one fishery position that is dedicated to habitat work and non-game species, and it's been held vacant.
okay, and that's been okay. I know a lot of the fisheries are not funded by a general fund, and that's why I was.
Generally not, but this particular position, since it's working under these grants, not dealing with game species, does have that general fund component. Because we don't use sportsman license to deal with non-game.
Okay, and then briefly, the other categories were what? So GIS, fisheries, and
Well, it's salary savings. It's from GIS and fisheries.
those are the
That's
was
10.
it. Okay.
Yeah, that's
I didn't
fiscal
see-
year 10. And then a change in our federal match rate for the wildlife grant.
Okay.
Only thing you don't want to cut your money-making machine.
Yes.
And your money-making machine is the fish and the game department, I think. 'Cause that generates your income.
Resource production.
And, but you guys, you know, we don't have a say in that, but I mean, that's just, we can comment on it, oh, yeah. Okay, let's have a public comment. We had a hand up there. Step on up, dude. That's you.
It's me.
But you got to stand up.
Gil Yannick, representing myself. I hate to be a killjoy when you're talking about how difficult the budget's going to be, but every year, I see things happening that we're not prepared to take care of, and we depend on the largesse of a lot of the organizations, Wild Sheep Foundation, NBU, to come in with hundreds and thousands of dollars to keep our equipment operating. And in all the years that I owned a company, if I had a piece of equipment, I budgeted to keep it operating, to repair it, to maintain it, to service it, to update it. And I don't see how the department does not adequately budget for the repair of their helicopters. I think that's totally wrong. That's not the way you run a company. And, you got to think about that when you do the budget, because every organization that, I do a lot of volunteer work and stuff, and I go out trying to raise funds for my programs that I run, and donations are tough to get. And sooner or later, some of these very large contributors who have come to the aid of the department year after year after year are going to say, we don't have it, or we just haven't been able to collect it, or there are other issues that need this money also. And I don't know what the solution is, but I think when we start looking at, you're saying you're going to not fill a couple of positions, well, you're talking about if we need another repair, if we're going to be using that helicopter for all this issues that we have with sheep, I sure hope they keep operating, and the money that we spent last year is going to keep it going for another year or two, or we just got to find I don't think we're doing ourselves a service or doing it properly if we don't adequately plan for these kind of things to happen. And I know we have reserves, and we always find a reason to draw down those reserves, like, we steal from Peter to pay Paul until the license fees start coming in. And if we don't have those reserves, it's almost equivalent to your year's budget. I'm not saying I have the panacea. how to do it, but I feel that we're not doing a job of adequately saying what it costs to run this department if we don't allocate sufficient funds to keep that aircraft or the pilots or whatever it needs in the air.
Thank you. Commissioner Beth?
Patrick, along that line, could you explain the protocols for doing a repair and maintenance part of your budget and the CapEx part of your budget? I mean, what are the requirements to basically deal with these kind of issues? Can you give us some background on that?
Well, we do budget for routine maintenance of our aircraft. If something major happens, then we look at pulling it out of our reserve. You know, you never know when you're going to need a major overhaul, but the routine scheduled maintenances, we budget for that. And, you know, I agree with the statements I just heard. You know, part of the reason that we don't have the reserves is, well, the session before last, I guess, that the legislature had to spend down those reserves. We would like to get into a place where we have collected enough reserves to fund next year's budget so that we are spending that down throughout the year while we're collecting new revenue. And we also have been looking at our Air Ops program and how we charge out time, how we allocate to that, and we've recognized that's an issue. We shouldn't have to go outside to replace an aircraft, but it's immensely expensive. And if we're not able to keep our reserves up, they're sweeping them, making us spend them down, it becomes impossible, unfortunately, to do that. We recognize the problem. We would like to fix it.
Do the PR and the DJ funds, do they, as part of accounting to them, does any of those funds get allocated to any of these kind of CapEx and repair and maintenance type issues, or is it solely out of our license funds that the repair and maintenance type expenses can be funded from?
Well, the Air Ops program is cost allocated across the department, so it does pick up federal funds to fund that. I don't know specifically about the renovations we did to the helicopter, whether we pulled in federal funds for that, but the routine operations, absolutely we do, the maintenance. Yeah, it's all part of our overall indirect costs that we charge each program.
Okay. Well, between the Finance Committee meeting that I attended this morning and some of these things, I'm learning a lot, and I think that, you know, I'm going to be very interested in understanding, because, you know, people like Gil and myself and a lot of the other people on the commission come from business, and for instance, I can tell you that a hotel casino actually creates in their budget, you know, we know that every 5 years we're going to have to basically do a full-blown remodel of every single room in a hotel. And so that all gets kind of baked in. And so it just seems to me that, you know, we need to, you know, I think it's a very, very good comment that Gil's making is that we really need to kind of anticipate these kind of things. And as we learn this budget process and as the, you know, we get more information coming from the separate accounts, you know, the budget accounts that are going to be set up and that have been proposed and everything, I think we'll start, you know, being able to focus in on that kind of stuff. But you know, it's wonderful that we have that resource, but, you know, wow, what if you know, because right now, I mean, with the economy the way it is, as a general rule, even charitable organizations have taken massive hits in the amount of donations they've been able to get. And so there may come a time when we just don't have the luxury to call on an NBU or a FNAS or any of these other groups. And so I think we need to really kind of concentrate on that.
Commissioner Capurro?
Yes, well, and you mentioned part of the problem is that the legislature requires you to, you know, which is, they don't understand business either, frankly, to pull down those reserves, which is the opposite of what you should be doing, establishing a sinking fund for exactly what you're talking about. And that makes it difficult because it makes you a target for criticism as to, well, why didn't you anticipate this? Because, you know, you don't anticipate, you had a seize up, if I remember correctly, on this helicopter. So that's not general maintenance. That was
Right.
That was something that you know, you couldn't really anticipate. And you'd love to be able to start a sinking fund that says 5 years down the road, we need to replace the whole helicopter, so we've got to be able to reserve enough to do that at that time. But they're not gonna let you do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like
And
to make a
I just wanted to add, if I may, you know, we do include replacement equipment in our budgeting process. We have schedules for replacing our vehicles. You know, we do all that to the extent we have funding, but a helicopter is really big ticket item, and we just haven't been able to get there.
What you know, I've been around a long time, but I just want to compliment the commissioner. What I'm hearing today, and what I've heard over the last 30 years of the commission, and with Patrick Cates there, this commission actually is interested in the budget. They understand it. They're talking about it. We've got somebody in the department now that understands this, and he can relate to the commission. And the past commissions, I'll tell you right now, didn't give a darn about this. They just didn't care about it, didn't want to spend the energy and the time, and the department didn't want to spend the time trying to explain it to a bunch of dummies up here. And now you guys are... Oh, personal tax? I'm sorry. Erase that for the record. Erase that for the record. But now, we've got commissioners that are interested, and we got staff that are very knowledgeable, and it's so refreshing for me to hear this dialogue go back and forth, and this open dialogue, and it's just, you know, welcome aboard, Patrick.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this, and I really appreciate the commissioners that are really showing an interest in. It's just working so great for me. And with that, let's go to litigation with Deb.